Hey guys, I know I'm a day late, but happy belated 4th of July to all of my fellow Americans watching this video. I figured that I would take some time to celebrate our freedom by predicting who I believe will make Team USA in the 2019 World Cup, and who I personally want to see make the final roster. I suppose we should start by listing off players who are likely to try out at each position, then decide who has the best odds to make the final roster. Let's begin with the main tank position. If I were a betting man, I would say the three people to likely have a good shot at making the roster are Super, Muma, and Fact Fiction. All three of these guys are pretty talented, and they possess certain strengths that the others don't. For an example, I would say that Super and Fact Fiction possess more leadership qualities than Muma, but at the same time, Muma is arguably the best Winston and Orisa player out of the three. Super's arguably the best Reinhardt, but Fact Fiction is probably the most well-rounded player of the bunch. If I'm going to be completely honest, I don't think you could go wrong with any of these guys. They're an experienced group of players who know what it takes to be successful, but as of right now, I feel that the obvious pick for the starting main tank this year as of right now is Super. Since around the start of the Stage 1 playoffs, Super's tank play has been next level. I will admit that there were moments early on this year where Super was straight up struggling, but he had the motivation and dedication needed to improve. And that is the exact quality you want to have in a player. You don't want some lazy person who thinks they're already good enough. What any coach should be looking for is somebody who puts in the work and is constantly on the grind. All you have to do is look at how much Super improved on Ryan in such a short amount of time, and you'll realize that Super possesses this crucial quality. I'm sure some people will say that if Goats ends up dying out, he won't be nearly as effective since his Winston and Orisa are average, but if he puts in the effort to improve like he did on Ryan, then I don't think it's going to be much of a problem at all. I believe that Super could be more than good enough on any tank hero, so long as he continues to show that drive that makes him strive for improvement. Hopefully Arrow notices this quality in Super. Potentially pairing him up with some of his teammates and just people he has good chemistry with in general could be very dangerous. Again though, I wouldn't be all that surprised if Muma or Fact Fiction end up making it instead. We know what these guys are capable of, but I just don't see Arrow going with Muma again after his underwhelming performance in the World Cup last year, and something tells me that he'll want Super over Fact Fiction since he and the Shock have found so much success in the Overwatch League so far. Moving on to Flex Tank, the options aren't really as good. The only realistic choices I see at this position are Space, McGravy, Coolmat, and Gods, and out of all of them, the only standout ones, at least for me, are Space and McGravy. I apologize to any Coolmat fans out there, but the guy appears to be kind of washed up at this point in his career, and while Gods isn't bad, Space and McGravy, in my opinion, are just better. Anyway, we already know what Space is capable of on D.Va, Hog, and Zarya due to the tremendous amount of success he's had individually on the Valiant. McGravy has also proven to be a strong player through the time he spent on the Florida Mayhem and their academy team. In the end though, I feel that the coaching staff knows that the obvious choice for the starting flex tank is Space. To put it simply, the guy is a hard carry machine, and he's very intelligent. His synergy with Super could also be pretty good, since the two of them seem to get along pretty well from what I've seen from when they duel on stream. Last year it kind of felt like Muma and Space were lacking that synergy that makes for a great tank line. Super and Space working together seems like it could be the best possible tank combination for Team USA on paper, and so long as everything works out in tryouts, the Team USA committee will likely have Space make the starting roster. Okay, let's talk DPS. This position easily has the most available options, and it's not even close. The hit scan players who will likely try out are Sinatra, Dante, Baby Bay, KSF, and Corey. Each one of these guys are very capable players, but only two of them at most are going to make the team. But how do we go about deciding who the best possible options are without going strictly off how they perform in tryouts? Let's talk about some of the strengths and weaknesses of each player to get a better idea. Starting with Sinatra, what he brings to the table in terms of hit scan DPS is a solid Tracer, Sombra, and Soldier 76. But that's kind of it. His Widowmaker, which is something you have to be good at when taking on some of the best Widow players in the world, is pretty average. The wonderful thing about Sinatra though is that he can make up for this lack of a good Widowmaker with his flexibility. As we all know, he is one of the best Zarya players in the entire world, so this is a big strength that he brings to the table if tank heavy compositions are still a thing during the World Cup. And even if a 2-2-2 role lock ends up being a thing, on a map like King's Row where you want a good Zarya, you could always put Sinatra on her anyway, then have the flex tank play Sombra. Other heroes Sinatra can play include Brigitte, Doomfist, and Junkrat. We also know that Sinatra is willing to go along with whatever Coach Arrow has planned because he flexed onto heroes such as Wrecking Ball and Reinhardt against Team Canada in the group stage last year. Now let's talk Dante. Kind of like with Sinatra, he also is a fantastic Sombra and Tracer player, but tends to fall short in the Widowmaker department. He too, however, can make up for this with his versatility. Dante has shown the ability to play projectile heroes such as Pharah and Genji in the past. His Zarya also isn't the worst, but he's probably not the person you want playing her in the World Cup. Dante could very well be the hard carry that Team USA needs. We've seen how much of an impact his Sombra had in Stage 3 for the Outlaws, so I don't see why he couldn't string together more of the same impressive performances in the World Cup. But how about Baby Bay, you may ask? Well, I would say that he's probably the most well-rounded hit-scan player out of all 5 people I'm talking about for this position. The man is an absolute legend on McCree Soldier 76, and while he's never been a crazy good Widow duelist in the past, he's still pretty serviceable on the hero overall. The same goes for his Tracer and Sombra. He's not going to blow you away on either of them, but he can definitely get the job done, and while he gets his graph eaten a bit too much for my liking, Baby Bay has proven that he can have strong performances on Zarya as well. Next, I wanted to discuss KSF. In Stage 3 of the Overwatch League, the man has kind of been popping off. Whether it's on Zarya or DPS, he's been a major playmaker for the Valiant as of late. In terms of his DPS hero pool, I would say that his best hit scan is Widowmaker. He also plays some Tracer, Sombra, Soldier, and McCree here and there, but I wouldn't say he's amazing at any of them. He's definitely not bad at the same time though, so I'm going to call KSF serviceable on them. His Hanzo is also proven to be lethal, and if I remember correctly, he can play some Genji too. And finally, there's Corey. He's definitely a wildcard who probably wouldn't be a bad option off the bench. While Zarya is kind of unappealing, I'm a pretty big fan of his DPS. His Widowmaker in particular is really scary. The guy could probably hold his own against a majority of the top Widow players in the world. Look at how he fared against Linkser if you need proof. Sure, the Justice got killed in that game, but Corey got the best of Linkser in the Widow duel on multiple occasions. Overall, Corey's hit scan is pretty consistent. His Sombra, Tracer, Soldier, and McCree are not on the same level of his Widow, but he's probably good enough to get the job done on any of these heroes. Out of the 5 guys I listed off, you could probably make an argument for any one of them making the final roster. They all have tremendous individual skill. However, I am someone who believes that Coach Arrow is biased, so therefore, I predict that Sinatra is going to make Team USA for a 3rd year in a row. I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing if Sinatra makes it since he has matured into a leader and is pretty skilled, but Arrow's bias may blind him to better potential options at this position. If Zarya is something that DPS players still need to primarily be on come this November, then Sinatra may be the best bet. But if DPS proves to be more important, then Sinatra may not be the best pick here. But regardless of how I feel, I still believe he ends up making the team. But I'm not quite done. I'm predicting that Corey also makes the final roster and will be coming off the bench. My reasoning behind this pick is simple. The man is arguably the best Widowmaker in the United States, and if Widow becomes a crucial part of the World Cup's meta, then the team would really benefit from Corey's assistance. I'm hoping that the staff comes to this realization too. If Arrow really is a smart coach, then he should know that Sinatra cannot be relied on to play Widow. I see Team USA primarily running Sinatra, then subbing in Corey on the really big Widowmaker maps. And hey, if a 2-2-2 Rollock does not get implemented, then you could run triple DPS with Corey on Widow and Sinatra on Tracer. There's also been certain maps in the past where Tracer and Widow is an acceptable DPS duo to run, so Sinatra and Corey could coexist in that way as well. Moving on to Flex DPS, the players who are going to have a really good chance of making the team in my opinion are Blase, Hydration, Nero, and Zachary. And no, by the way, I do not see Jake even attempting to try out. Last year he really didn't have much interest, and I see this year being more of the same. Jake seems like the type of guy to only want to try the World Cup once, and would prefer to relax during his time off. Perhaps he'll even do casting again like he did in 2018. Anyway, in terms of overall skill and flexibility, I would say that all of these guys are pretty good. Starting with Blase, he's had multiple strong showcases in the Overwatch League on projectile heroes and Brigitte. But that's not all his hero pool is limited to. The guy can even flex onto Doomfist, Tracer, and Roadhog if needed. One other trait that I love about Blase is that he has the clutch gene. In many of the games Boston has won this year, he has made some very heroic plays. This especially goes for the matches in which the Uprising had to reverse sweep in order to win. Any player who can be clutch in late game scenarios should be considered a valuable asset. Moving on to Hydration, I would say that his hero pool is very similar to Blase's. He specializes in projectile, but he can also play Brigitte, Doomfist, Roadhog, Orisa, or Bastion if needed. I like Hydration a lot, but I don't know if he's the best possible option, especially if support-heavy compositions end up still being important when the World Cup gets underway. Nero also happens to possess very similar skills to both Blase and Hydration. My absolute favorite thing about watching Nero is when he plays Hanzo. The man's playmaking ability on this hero is next level. Overall though, his hero pool is pretty large. He basically excels at all projectile characters in the game, and he can flex onto Zarya and Brig if Goats continues to stick around. Nero is a bit unproven still since he's only been eligible to play in the Overwatch League since the beginning of Stage 3, but what better way to prove yourself than to pop off in tryouts and represent your country in the World Cup? Then of course there's Zachary, the quote-unquote flex DPS according to the Dallas Fuel. I'll be honest when I say that I straight up don't believe Zach is a good fit for Team USA. He has to show that he can handle situations where there's either a lot of pressure or when taking on a really good opponent. I can understand not playing well in the World Cup last year due to inexperience, but there's no excuse to underperform after 6 months of being the starter on the Dallas Fuel. Zachary is plagued by inconsistency. There have been moments against top dog teams such as the Vancouver Titans where he straight up fed on Brig. For the most part, Zach only seems to play a good game against mid to low tier teams, and there won't be any of that in the World Cup unfortunately. Only the best of the best represent their countries. To me, Zach is not the right person for this job. But because Coach Arrow likes him so much, there definitely is a chance he ends up making the team, so let's discuss what he brings to the table. In terms of projectile, Zack has shown off a decent Hanzo, Genji, and Junkrat at times, but again, even on those heroes he tends to be pretty inconsistent. Other characters he's known for playing are Sombra, Tracer, Brigitte, and Widowmaker. I will admit that his Sombra and Tracer actually aren't all that bad, and although his Brig is shaky at times, he definitely has his moments on her. I really don't understand why the Dallas Fuel made Zack their flex player. He was known for hits game while he played for Fusion University after all. Sometimes I question what goes through Coach Arrow's head. It's obvious that he has way too much trust in Zack. If Arrow has a brain, he'll know that Zack is not the right person for this job. He's not ready yet. He needs more time to grow. Although I have my doubts, I see Blase getting selected as the flex DPS for Team USA. As mentioned before, Blase has the clutch factor, and that should give him a leg up over everybody else. Him and Hydration have the experience that Nero and Zachary lack, so they're definitely the top two options. Hydration is definitely a good choice to represent Team USA, but Blase is the best. Alright, time to pick the supports. Let's get the easier one out of the way first by mulling the options at main support. I kid you not when I say that this position practically has no choices whatsoever. The only realistic options in my opinion are Moth, Elk, and Boink, but we can immediately eliminate Elk from tryouts as he declined his invitation to focus on contenders. So now that leaves us with just Moth and Boink. To me, the choice for this position is pretty obvious. Moth outclasses Boink in pretty much every way imaginable. He's the better Mercy and Lucio player without a doubt. Moth also arguably has been a top 5 main support in the Overwatch League this year, meanwhile Boink has been pretty underwhelming for the most part. And one other thing that I really do like about Moth is how vocal he is. Based off everything I've heard, he is an excellent in-game leader. It goes beyond shot calling too. He supposedly has been the glue that's held the Shock together. He knows how to keep his teammates in check when they start to get overconfident. I haven't really heard any of these things about Boink, so that's yet another reason to select Moth over him. I doubt many people would argue with me when I say that Moth is probably the best American main support as of right now. The choice for this position should be easy. And finally, we have to discuss flex support. There's 3 players that I realistically see making the team. Those people are Sleepy, Ruckus, and Dogman. Since they all play support, they basically have a very similar hero pool. Every single one of them primarily plays Zenyatta, Ana, and Moira. But who should be chosen to represent the United States? Well, to me, it comes down to whose strengths you can play around the best. Do you want the high energy and aggressive playstyle of Dogman, or perhaps the veteran leadership of Ruckus? Or do you want the consistent play that Sleepy brings to the table? Although I'm hoping my prediction is wrong, I believe that Ruckus will be selected as Team USA starting flex support once again. I personally am not a huge fan of Ruckus because he is very inconsistent and also tends to get punished because of poor positioning. I know that he's been better with that in Stage 3, but I don't trust Ruckus to keep up this level of play. I feel that Arrow's bias towards the players he likes will blind him in the flex support selection process. Usually I would say that having veteran presence is good, especially when your teammates are getting overexcited, but as mentioned before, Moth is pretty good at keeping his teammates calm and collected, so I really don't see what use Ruckus would have. Sleepy seems like the better choice since he's more consistent than Ruckus and Dogman. It also helps that he has previous synergy with Moth, Sinatra, and Super. As badly as I want to see Sleepy on the final roster, I believe that Ruckus will be selected over him. It's not like he'll be a bad fit, don't get me wrong, he has played with Space, Sinatra, and Moth before, but he's going to have to pop off a lot if he wants to prove his worth this year because he was anything but impressive in 2017 and in 2018. So those are the 7 players I see making Team USA this year. I'm not saying these predictions are definitely going to come true by any means, but a team consisting of Super, Space, Sinatra, Blase, Corey, Moth, and Ruckus sounds pretty realistic, does it not? Now let's have a bit more fun. Feel free to join me in the comment section if you'd like, because it's time to make a dream team for the United States. Starting with tanks, I have Super and Space. I honestly believe that this will be the best possible tank line the US could run. Both of these guys are intelligent, and I feel they would have really good coordination, whether it's on Ryan Zarya, Winston Diva, or Orisa Hogg. Although I will admit that I might put Fact Fiction over Super if he continues to string together more impressive performances on the Valiant. But until I see more proof of his dominance, I'm going to stick with Super. And Space is pretty much a lock no matter what. He's basically a top 2 off tank in all of North America. Moving on to DPS, my rotation is going to depend on the meta. If Zarya is still a crucial character used by DPS players, then I would like to see Sinatra for Zarya and Tracer, Dante for his ridiculously good Sombra play, and Blase for his strong flexibility. This DPS trio is very capable of hard carrying their team if needed, but let's say Zarya and Goats in general dies out. If this ends up being the case, then I want KSF over Sinatra, with Dante and Blase still making the team. Why KSF over Sinatra, you may be asking? Well, to put it simply, I don't like that Sinatra can't really play Widow. Sure, the team will miss out on his Tracer and maybe his Zarya at certain points if she's still used, but I'm confident that KSF and Dante will pick up the slack. And remember, Dante himself is a pretty good Tracer, and while KSF is not Sinatra level, he's shown the ability to play a solid Zarya of his own. I feel that KSF's hero pool will be of great value since a combination of him and Blase will allow for Team USA to pretty much run any comp they'd like. KSF and Blase could make for a dangerous 1-2 punch. They basically can play anything their team needs. Versatility is something that I value greatly, and these two most definitely check off the box for it. What's great about this DPS rotation is that Dante can be subbed in at any given moment and the team won't suffer at all. In fact, his Sombra could actually prove to be a real nuisance, especially if he has more of those massive EMPs we saw from him in Stage 3, and if the map calls for it, then he could always play some Tracer instead. For my support line, I would want Moth and Sleepy. As I said before, Moth is probably the #1 main support in the USA right now, so picking him is kind of a no-brainer, and I'm a big fan of his in-game leadership. My reasoning behind the Sleepy pick is also pretty simple. I believe that he is far more consistent than both Raucus and Dogman. I've always had a high opinion on Sleepy, and I kind of feel that he should have been on the team last year if I'm going to be 1000% honest. I heard rumors that his comms weren't good back then, but there's no way that's true anymore if those rumors were actually real. He's been striving to be a leader on the Justice ever since joining the team, so I'm sure he'd make for a perfect teammate. Having previous synergy with the Shock players makes Sleepy even more of an ideal fit for Team USA this year, and that's who I would put on Team USA if I was managing the team. To sum it up, my final roster would be Super, Space, KSF, Dante, Blase, Moth, and Sleepy. Well, that pretty much wraps everything up here. Those are all of the players I foresee making the 2019 World Cup team for the United States, as well as who I personally would select if I was in charge. Who do you think makes Team USA? Let me know down in the comment section. If you enjoyed this content and you want to see some more World Cup coverage in the future, then be sure to hit that like button and sub to my channel if you're new. As always, thank you all so much for watching today's video, and until next time, this is ATP, signing out. Bye!